In LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, studs act as currency. You can use them to buy characters in the shop, extras, gold bricks, among other things. They're also needed to get True Jedi in each level to 100% complete the game, which is why today I thought that we'd ask ourselves the question of how quickly can you get a stud in each level in LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga. Before we get started, there are a couple of rules that I wanted to explain. Firstly, no extras, so no stud magnet, no infinite torpedoes or vehicle levels, nothing like that. And secondly, the timer will start on the first frame we're able to move our character, and the timer will end when the stud counter at the top of the screen goes up. Now I could have instead chosen to end the timer when our character physically touches the stud. However, there are a couple of situations in the game, especially in vehicle levels, where the way the studs get added to the counter changes. In most levels, you have to physically touch the stud for it to get added. However, in some vehicle levels, they get added automatically when you destroy certain things. So for the sake of consistency, I've just decided to keep everything nice and simple, and stop the timer on the exact frame that the stud counter changes. Additionally, you'll notice that all of the levels are in free play. That is just to skip the cutscene at the start of the level, because if you load up the level in story mode, it won't let you skip the cutscene, so I've loaded into each level in free play, but playing as one of the characters you'll get given in story mode. And with that all said, 2024, first video of the new year, let's get into it. Starting off with episode 1, chapter 1, Negotiations. If you hold diagonally left and up as soon as you spawn in, you'll be able to collect a stud at around 1 second 50 milliseconds. And for those of you wondering, yes, that is 5 milliseconds faster than backflipping onto the table behind you. Episode 1, Chapter 2, Invasion of Naboo. This one is another really easy level. Just walk straight forwards from spawn, and you'll get a stud at around the 4 second 14 millisecond mark. Episode 1, Chapter 3, Escape Naboo, is once again really easy. As soon as you spawn in, just walk straight behind you, and you'll get a stud that's tucked into a corner in around 2 seconds 31 milliseconds. Now episode 1, chapter 4, Mos Espa Pod Race, is where things start to get a little bit interesting. This is a vehicle level, our first vehicle level of the video, and you play as Anakin Skywalker's pod racer, which doesn't have any guns on it, hasn't got any weapons, any torpedoes, any projectiles, nothing. Which means you can't destroy things to get studs. So, if you can't shoot anything to get studs, how do you get studs? Well, it involves these poles. Now scattered around the map are lines of poles, which indicate the direction that you need to go in. If you crash into them with your pod racer, you will get studs added automatically to the counter. So that is how we get studs in this level. We just need to fly until we hit the first pole, which will take around 8 seconds 49 milliseconds, which is an incredibly long time to wait to collect a stud in a LEGO game level. Episode 1, Chapter 5, Retake Feed, is a simple walk up to the right of the screen to collect a stud within around 3 seconds 24 milliseconds. And finally, to conclude episode 1, chapter 6, Darth Maul, is a simple walk to the left of the screen, and there'll be a load of studs on the floor that you can collect within around 2 seconds 36 milliseconds. Okay, so moving on to episode 2 now, Attack of the Clones. Episode 2, chapter 1, Bounty Hunter Pursuit, is a vehicle level, however shooting is allowed in this one. Unlike the pod racing level though, these studs do not get automatically added when you destroy something, you have to manually go over them with your speeder. That said, as soon as you spawn in, if you hold the shoot button down, you will hit some signs that are off screen, causing these studs to dispense out of them. Then it's just a simple case of actually going over to them and collecting them, which you can do in around 2 seconds 30 milliseconds. Episode 2, Chapter 2, Discovery on Kamino, is a simple walk up to the right of the screen. There will be some studs next to a pillar that you can collect within around 1 second 29 milliseconds. Episode 2, Chapter 3, Droid Factory, is another really simple level. As soon as you spawn in, if you head up and left, you'll see some studs that you can collect within around 2 seconds 58 milliseconds. Episode 2, Chapter 4, Jedi Battle, is much the same thing, up and to the left. The only difference is you get into the level a bit later, as there's an in-game cutscene establishing the scene where you can see Padme getting tied up. This has no impact on our challenge, however, because we're starting the timer on the first frame that we can move our character, not when the level itself starts. That said, it takes 3 seconds 36 milliseconds to collect a stud in this level. Episode 2, Chapter 5, Gunship Cavalry, is of course going to be annoying because it's Gunship Cavalry. Now you might expect that the way you get studs in this level is to shoot all the things on the floor. You've got the spider droids and the hellfire droids, but you'll notice that when you destroy them, they do not actually drop studs. So how do we get studs then? Well, the only way to get studs is by destroying the hard/round spots on the floor. If you destroy them, they drop studs, and then you simply just need to fly over them to collect the studs, which you can do in around 4 seconds 6 milliseconds. And finally, to round out episode 2, chapter 6, Count Dooku, is another really straightforward level. As soon as you spawn in, if you just walk forward, there'll be a stud in the door that you can collect within around 6 seconds 14 milliseconds. Moving on to episode 3, Revenge of the Sith now. Episode 3, chapter 1, Battle over Coruscant. It's one of the levels where these studs automatically get added to the counter when you destroy something, meaning that you don't have to spend extra time going over the studs and picking them up again. This level is insanely quick, as soon as you spawn in, if you hold the fire button down, you will hit something Now I don't know what you hit exactly, but you end up getting studs added to the counter before the stud counter even appeared, which means that we end up getting a stud in this level within 36 milliseconds. When compared to the previous level that we've just looked at, Episode 3, Chapter 2, Chance Live in Peril, it's really boring. Just a simple walk to the right of the screen to collect some studs within around 3 seconds, 3 milliseconds. Episode 3, Chapter 3, General Grievous, starts with an in-game cutscene after the intro cutscene. Once again, this doesn't actually matter, and we will only be starting the timer once we can move our character. Once it's over, however, and we gain control of Obi-Wan, it's just a short walk to the edge of the platform to collect some studs, which you can do in around 2 seconds 22 milliseconds. Now Episode 3, Chapter 4, Defensive Kashyyyk, is a bit of an interesting level, because you have Yoda. And Yoda doesn't really behave like most of the other characters in the game. You see, characters have a fixed walking speed, and when you pull out your weapon, that doesn't change. Astronaut droids have their fixed walking speed and flying speed, and protocol droids, while slower, do so have a fixed speed when moving. Yoda's speed, on the other hand, varies depending on whether you've got your lightsaber out or not. When you're playing as Yoda without the lightsaber, he is incredibly slow, which for what we're doing really isn't too helpful. Well, okay, now that we know how Yoda works, you might be sat there thinking that all we need to do is just play as Yoda with his lightsaber out to collect a stud in the quickest way possible. But we can actually do a little bit better than that. When you attack as Yoda, he lunges forwards. So if we combine this lunge with the additional speed of pulling the lightsaber out, we can collect a stud in this level within 1 second 40 milliseconds. Episode 3, Chapter 5, Ruin of the Jedi. It's just a really long walk behind you, underneath the Jedi Temple, which takes around 7 seconds 27 milliseconds. And finally, closing out Episode 3, is my personal favourite level in this entire game. Episode 3, Chapter 6, Darth Vader. Now if you know me, you'll know this level is already very weird. I've made a video talking about how ghost characters break the final fight completely. And this level's no exception here, because you spawn on a stud. You'll notice, as the title screen and intro crawl wipe away, a stud will start going up to the counter, which you can't actually see because the counter hasn't loaded in yet. But it's there, and it's still counting, which means you can collect a stud in this level in around 15 milliseconds. Moving on to the original trilogy now. Starting off with Episode 4, A New Hope. Episode 4, Chapter 1, Secret Plans, is really easy. Just a simple walk to the left of the screen to collect a stud within around 1 second 38 milliseconds. I also think that the perspective you get here is quite cool, because you're looking through the windows at Leia and Antilles. Episode 4, Chapter 2, Through the Jundland Wastes, is usually a very long level. Luckily for us today, that is not the case, and we can get this level done within around 3 seconds 6 milliseconds by simply walking behind us at spawn. Episode 4, Chapter 3, Mos Eisley Spaceport, is once again another really straightforward level. It's just a short walk forward towards some bins, and you'll find some studs there that you can collect within around 3 seconds 24 milliseconds. Episode 4, Chapter 4, Rescue the Princess, is another straightforward level. There'll be some studs facing you as soon as you spawn in by a door, just walk towards them and you can collect them within around 2 seconds 21 milliseconds. Episode 4, Chapter 5, Death Star Escape, is one of the levels where you spawn on a stud, meaning I've had to estimate again because the stud counter isn't on the screen yet. In this level you can get a stud in around 1 second 1 millisecond-ish. And finally, ending on Episode 4 on a vehicle level, is Episode 4, Chapter 6, Rebel Attack. As soon as you spawn in, if you spin around and head behind you, there'll be a panel that you have to shoot, which will dispense some studs. Then you simply have to fly back over the panel you've just shot to actually collect the studs, which you can do in around 4 seconds 25 milliseconds. Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back now. Episode 5, Chapter 1, Hoth Battle, is a vehicle level. Much like Gunship Cavalry, the infantry on the ground do not give studs, neither do the turrets on the floor. So the only place that we can get studs in this area is from the big rocks. Just gotta go up to them and shoot them, which you can do in around 6 seconds 56 milliseconds. Episode 5, Chapter 2, Echo Base, is just a simple walk forward towards the camera to collect some studs within around 2 seconds and 1 millisecond. Episode 5, Chapter 3, Falcon Flight, is a vehicle level. Now, like many of the vehicle levels that we've looked at so far in this video, destroying the AI vehicles that fly around will not give you studs. Instead, the way you get them in this level is by destroying the turrets on the Star Destroyers. Then it's just a simple case of flying over the studs and collecting them within around 6 seconds 22 milliseconds. Episode 5, Chapter 4, Dagobah, is a simple walk to the left of the screen. There'll be some studs by some boxes that you can collect within around 1 second 39 milliseconds. Episode 5, Chapter 5, Cloud City Trap, is a simple walk to the left of the screen once again to collect some studs within around 2 seconds 33 milliseconds. What if I told you, however, that we can actually get the stud in this level even faster? See, on top of the X-Wing, there's a blue stud, and if you backflip immediately upon spawning in, you won't even hit the stud, but you'll somehow end up collecting it within 1 second 40 milliseconds. And finally, Episode 5's last level, Betrayal over Bespin, is just a simple walk forwards to collect the stud within around 2 seconds 41 milliseconds. And finally, our final episode of LEGO Star Wars Complete Saga, Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Episode 6, Chapter 1, Shepherd's Palace is a simple walk to the left of the screen to collect some studs within around 2 seconds 26 milliseconds. Episode 6, Chapter 2, The Great Pit of Carcoon, is once again a simple walk to the left of the screen to collect some studs in 1 second and 51 milliseconds. However, we can actually improve upon that slightly by doing something similar to what we were doing in Episode 5, Chapter 5, Cloud City Trap. If we spawn in and then immediately jump behind us, we will end up collecting the stud within around 1 second 20 milliseconds instead of 1 second 51 milliseconds, so it ends up being slightly faster. Episode 6, Chapter 3, Speeder Showdown. Upon spawning in, you'll notice there are no studs, meaning the only way we can get them here is by destroying the plants. Luckily, that isn't too difficult, just a short walk forwards before attacking the plants to collect a stud within around 4 seconds and 5 milliseconds. Episode 6, Chapter 4, The Battle of Endor, is another really quick level, because this is one of the levels where you spawn on a stud. So like all of the other ones where you spawn on a stud, the stud counter doesn't actually appear. So I've had to estimate this one at around 1 second 3 milliseconds. Episode 6, Chapter 5, Jedi Destiny. It's a bit of an interesting level, because it's got an in-game cutscene that plays, however it only plays after we've moved a bit, meaning we have to include it as part of the time of the level. Most of the other in-game cutscenes that we've had have been right at the start of levels, before we've been allowed to move, however this one is a bit different. Luckily it's not very long, it's just Palpatine jumping across the room, which doesn't really impact us a whole lot, meaning we can still get a stud within a very respectable time of 3 seconds 59 milliseconds. And finally, the last level in the game, Episode 6, Chapter 6, Into the Death Star. This one's a vehicle level, and like all of the other vehicle levels, as I've said every single time, the additional ships that fly around do not give studs, meaning we have to get them in this level by destroying the shield generators on top of the Star Destroyers. Fairly simple, just get a torpedo. This leads to a bit of an issue, in the fact that we have to wait for a TIE fighter to come along with a torpedo on the back of it. But once we've done that, we can just collect the torpedo and shoot at the shield generator, fly over the studs to collect them within around 8 seconds 55 milliseconds. And that is it, all 36 levels in LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga. The level you can collect a stud the quickest in is Episode 3, Chapter 6, Darth Vader, in 15 milliseconds, and the level it takes you the longest to collect a stud in is Episode 6, Chapter 6, Into the Death Star at 8 seconds 55 milliseconds. Other than that, that's it. Apologies for the long gap in uploads as well. I've been quite ill recently, but I'm slowly getting back into things, and slowly being able to think about more things at once, which is definitely nice. The video on screen now is the video I mentioned earlier, where we look at how ghost characters break the entirety of the final boss fight of Episode 3, Chapter 6, Darth Vader. It's a pretty interesting video with some fairly interesting results, so I'm sure you'll enjoy it. But yeah, that's it. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you all later.